everyone. We are now, this is a very interactive session. We did this in 2016 in our first conference of the Toilet Board Coalition when we just launched the accelerator program. It was our launch of the accelerator program in Mumbai, and it's something that we call needs and offers. It's really where the whole room, our whole global network here, get to tell the room what they offer, the sanitation economy, and what you need from other colleagues in the room to scale up your part of the sanitation economy. So we're going to do that now, and we're going to do it in two parts. I'm going to lead the first part, and my colleague Kelsey is going to lead the second part. In the first part, we've asked a few of you to step up and get this offers part rolling. So we're going to start with a few of you telling us what you offer the sanitation economy. And there's sort of three sections, and you'll see them on these boards. This is really an engagement pathway. So we want, if you're an entrepreneur, we want you to know what support is out there for you in scaling up your business in the sanitation economy. If you're a large business, we want you to know what support is out there through different organizations that are touching on aspects of the sanitation economy, and also, of course, in terms of investment, what investment support is out there. We've had a couple of panels outlining that, but we have many more that want to share with you their offers to the sector. So let's start with the engagement pathway entrepreneur, which is really intermediaries that have support mechanisms for entrepreneurs. I'd like to invite up to the stage Leena Thomas from Global Business INROADS, Nutan from RTI, and Meena from Water for People. Please come up to the stage. All right, Leena, let's start with you. Tell us what you do and your offer to the sector. How do you support entrepreneurs?
Great, fabulous. First of all, thank you, Cheryl and TBC, for inviting Global Business INROADS to share what we do. And really, when we set up 10 years ago, the problem we were trying to solve is that there are a number of fabulous technologies being invented. There is absolutely a need, and there are markets, but there's very little being done to actually help the innovators access these market opportunities. And that's what we got Global Business INROADS to do, is to create the mechanism, and you're calling this a pathway, we call it a process for tech access and deployment. We began with a primary focus of clean tech and climate change mitigation technologies, and we have seen that there is definitely a clear need for hand-holding for the technology companies when they are looking at accessing markets in India. So what we went on to do is, over the years, while actually doing the work, we first thought that it was about connecting with customers and partners when you come into a new country. We primarily focused on bringing international innovations into India. And eventually we realized that, it's also the same kind of support that Indian entrepreneurs seek when they want to commercialize in country or move abroad as well.
So is the support that you offer, it's commercialization of technologies?
Yes. It's process-based commercialization of technologies. What we encourage companies to do is don't approach markets with a sales approach. You need to validate your technology, so we offer services for market validation, building your technology, adopting ecosystem, helping you create pilot opportunities, develop a local business model. We call that technology localization. And once you do that with your real-time customers in a pilot, you're developing a strategy for commercialization that makes sense for India, and not necessarily what's working in America or Europe may not work in India. So had you come, a lot of entrepreneurs come, they try to sell, they give a proposal to a buyer in India, and the first thing is like, oh, it's too expensive, Will it work in my country? Who's going to pay if the technology doesn't work? So these are all the problems we mitigate through this process.
Fantastic, thank you. And Leena's organization has also contributed to some of the reports that are outside. We've done a market study on India, sort of looking at the new circular economy technologies and the market here in Pune. So you can see some of their live work. It's been very helpful to us. Thank you. Next, Nutan, RTI, who we've known for some time now, and you were with us in 2016, Nutan. Oh, how we've grown. So please tell us about RTI, and actually RTI was part of the genesis of this process. So tell us about that, Nutan.
Thank you. Let me just first start about talking about competition. I think all of us are here and everyone is competing with each other, which is great. I just want to also emphasize the need for collaboration, and I have to thank TBC for doing that. And if I just step back and really look at what has happened currently in India in the telecom sector, with Reliance really throwing all of the other telecom companies out, do we really feel competition is the only way out? Probably not. We also need collaboration. We need collaboration with like-minded people. We need also collaboration sometimes with competitors. So what I want to say, what RTI does is twofold things. That while you're competing with each other, you also need to identify areas of collaboration. And first, the areas of collaboration is really looking at how can I be profitable. I have to quote here Anshu, who I met in the morning. He was really telling me that he's struggling to make things profitable, and I think all of us really struggle to do that. So what we bring to the table is, while we are competing, what can be the market ecosystems that we need to create to make the market in the most enabling, or the ecosystem to be most enabling. And the second most important thing that I would say that RTI does, and in a very, very differentiating way, is how do you really create new markets? I think when I was in the yesterday's session of TBC, and I think Nimish and everyone were on the same seat, we really talked about what are the standards that needs to be done for toilets, which can create new market opportunities for newer products and services. So apart from what Leena's organization do, we do all of these things, but I'm just trying to say that we believe in collaboration. We believe in helping people like all of you in terms of coming together and finding their paths to success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nutan. And Water for People. Tell us about how you support entrepreneurs.
Great. Thank you for having Water for People here. And I would just like to start by just sharing that I was with the government of Bihar celebrating the World Toilet Day with them, and the whole vision and commitment to leaving no one behind was so strong given the last mile coverage issues. And the state has been affected by floods this year, and as you would know, the toilets get affected. And so there is, while we've achieved ODF, we still need to continue supporting the development of economy and the sanitation economy around that. And, in that context, I would, just like to share how we've been supporting incubation of enterprises for the last mile and the last mile enterprises in the state of Bihar and in the state of West Bengal. And not only looking at small-scale enterprises, individual entrepreneurs, but also looking at the cluster-level federations and the farmer-producer organizations, which are being also nurtured by various government programs. So in Bihar itself, at the moment, Jivika program, we have representations from Jivika here. There are about 500 cluster-level federations there. And in 6 districts, we are working with about 10 of them right now, but there are about 100. And in Water for People program areas, we've worked with 26 enterprises, leading to crowding in of another 77.
Fantastic. And Water for People is a global organization, and so not just here in India, but I know in particular, we've also, Water for People has been a mentor to some of our entrepreneurs in Uganda.
Yes.
And really, so what you've heard here is in terms of support, incubation, which is critically important also to fill out the ecosystem of the sanitation economy, collaboration, how we do cross-collaboration within the sanitation economy, which, as we said on Tuesday, we really get the market value that we were talking about from the compounding value across the different types of business models, and commercialization of technologies, which again is critically important at the stage that we're at in the sanitation economy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I next have to the stage our next cluster group, which is support for large businesses? Can I have Neil Dhot? Thank you. Yes. Can I have Neil Dhot from AQUAFED and Erik Harvey from Wash for Work? So these are our organizations that are supporting large businesses in the sanitation economy, in addition to the TBC, and the TBC is part of these two organizations via our members. We have members in common, and so we wanted to join forces here today and present the broader support. So Erik, I think you have a few slides about Wash for Work, which is a relatively new initiative. Alex, can we have the slides, please, for Wash for Work?
Great. So as a matter of interest, hands up anybody who's actually heard of Wash for Work. Okay. Not that many, so I have a job to do then. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a bit of a sense of what is Wash for Work. As some of you in the room probably know, I'm from WaterAid, and I think the first thing to say about Wash for Work, it is a collaborative effort. It's a growing group of people getting together to deal, to really think through the issues of how one can invest in wash, but through the businesses, the large businesses that exist across the world in the developing space. There we go. So you can just zip through the slides, the first ones. Next one, please. There we go. So I think largely just to say is that this is of course built in response to the global commitments for WASH for everyone everywhere. Building on obviously the SDGs, and the important one that we all know well is SDG 6, but I think some of us don't perhaps know the other one, which is related to decent work and economic growth, around protecting labour rights and promoting safe and secure working environments for all workers. And of course that's a critical part of most businesses, is that people work in businesses, people need WASH and water and sanitation services that you and I enjoy probably in our offices and in our places of work. Let's go to the next slide. And actually this one has, if you can just zip through, next one. Right, so really here this is about shifting away from siloed approaches and getting all sectors together towards mobilizing business to improve access to water and sanitation and hygiene in the workplace, across their supply chains and those communities where the workers live. So there's a whole ecosystem here, and tackling that cannot be done alone. As we've all heard during this week, right? None of this happens in silos. So government's got a job to do, development agencies have got a job to do, civil society's got a job to do, and business has a job to do. So it's really what Wash for Work is about, bringing all of those together, looking for the complementary goals and vision in engaging business around its own operations to contribute to the overall WASH agenda. Next slide. So this one we can just zip through. This just gives you a timeline of how this initiative has grown, so you just keep clicking. Thank you. Keep going. This is what happens when you put animation in your slides. And I'm going to talk through a little bit about the top of the slides there, the current initiatives, what's going on there, but I'll talk at that through the next ones. And really the important pieces were, you know, when one brings together various actors, it takes a bit of time to work things out and get things going. But we are really now in the place where the Wash for Work website and the initial materials have all been launched. There's been a business case developed with publications and guidelines. And then there's a supply chains and voluntary standards report that's out, and then there's a bit of a process of revisioning about what it's all about and the increasing uptake in companies. And let me move on to the next slides, because this is where it really comes together in terms of, so who's all involved. As you can see, some really major players there in the business field, in the UN space, so global organizations, other networks and councils. And I think the important thing that we realized in putting this together is that this can build on and use existing platforms and networks like WBCSD, etc. So it's, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there we go. I think what's interesting here is, in terms of WASH for workers, what this initiative is all about. The challenges that the textiles industries face with Gap taking a lead there, the challenges in manufacturing with Unilever, taking a lead, and Diageo taking a lead on agriculture and supply chains. So, I think what we like about this group is that it also brings additional expertise to the work that we're doing, and starts to highlight again some of those needs for service provision of sanitation economy solutions. So what we're trying to do with the toilet board, as part of this group, is to link up this work and being, as they identify challenges, in providing WASH, also we can provide solutions through the service providers in this room.
Great, thanks. So let's go into the next slide, which tells you a little bit what the main interventions areas of the group are. So it's about WASH in the workplace to meet workers' health, safety, comfort and dignity needs. And there's a lot of interesting emerging learning in this space as we've been working with companies around what this actually means. So you start with your traditional things where you need water points, you need hand washing stations, you need toilets, etc. And then you need some hygiene promotion. And then you very quickly learn that actually you need to integrate that with the business processes that are actually happening in the particular factory or workplace in question. You learn to understand things that in some factories lunchtime comes and the entire workforce moves en masse towards lunch, and you've only got 3 taps, right? And you've got 5,000 people who need to wash their hands. That doesn't quite work, right? So it's really very, very practical learnings that are coming through this work in that space. And you heard, I think a couple of days ago, about people already investing in this in a big way. Millions have been spent by companies on providing these services in their businesses, which is great. I can point to some water ministry buildings that don't have the same levels of service, I might add. The second intervention area is WASH across supply chains. So this is getting much deeper into the supply chain. So you heard also earlier this week about investments happening in tea plantations. There's a whole ecosystem and settlement pattern and long history of people living and working on tea plantations, and real solid good examples of investments happening in those spaces. Where that gets more complicated is for the likes of Unilever and others, is where you have a much more distributed supply chain, and how do you work through that model in a way that ensures that people working on the various smallholder farms, etc., are actually also enjoying good quality water and sanitation services through that supply chain. And WASH in the community, so those same communities from where that workforce comes from, what's going on in those spaces. And a lot of this is around really building the business case for this and understanding why it's important, figuring out actually what are the benefits to the business in doing this. It's some of the non-tangibles around trust and permission to operate as an organization, building loyalty across your workforce and the community behind that workforce. But it's also about more practical things like productivity, and figuring out how we potentially measure some of that through the supply chain. Let's carry on. Oh, and just to say, it also fundamentally links to the water stewardship approach that many companies are finding, that actually much better focus on water stewardship actually links very nicely across these two spaces, and it also drives greater business efficiency as well. We carry on. So So this gives you a kind of an overall kind of emerging theory of how this operates. As you know, we have governments, we've got public and civil society, and we've got business. Each have different roles and responsibilities, but there needs to be interaction between those. So governments are around providing the guiding policies to ensure the services are delivered. Public and civil society about demanding those services, holding the stakeholders to account, and business is about respecting human rights and use of the resources in a sustainable way, and increasingly also playing a role in the delivery of many of those services. And these interactions that need to happen across all of these, and that's why it has been so important to bring all these entities together to work on this problem in a collective way. Development agencies like WaterAid and others often operate across all three of these spaces and can be really important in facilitating and catalyzing discussions across those spaces. If we carry on, let's look at some quick examples. So the focus areas at the moment that we're focusing on are strengthening the business case for WASH in the workplace. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail just now, but providing a clear WASH standards with a link to the broader WASH stewardship. Alliance for Water Stewardship standard now includes WASH in the standard. Government engagement for conducive policies and regulatory environments, so there's a lot of focus on that in some of the spaces, some of the national spaces where we're working. There's active company outreach to achieve greater uptake, so it's trying to bring more partners on board and build the case within those companies that are already with us, and strong communication and advocacy to support all of that. And then just to carry on, just to give you some examples, the geographies we're working in. Next slide. Oh, the map's not there. Oh. We had a lovely map to show you where we're working, particularly on the business case. So with HSBC very quickly in Bangladesh, with ready-made garment factories and tanneries and embroidery workers in India, Twinings in tea plantations in India, Gap in the cut and sew factories in Bangalore, India, Diageo in barley farming communities in Tanzania, and Unilever in tea plantations in Kenya, where the real kind of the study and the work is ongoing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Erik. And WaterAid has played a huge leadership role in this work in convening these different players. So thank you to WaterAid. We said this earlier that there's a huge opportunity here. I mean, we talk a lot about households, the billions of people without sanitation in households, but there's also billions of people without access in the workplace, and businesses have different accountabilities and means to make that happen, and again that creates demand for the sanitation economy solutions. So we really think that this is one of the ways to get speed and scale in the sanitation economy is through the workforce. Thank you, Erik. Now over to you, Neil, and we're hoping that you will, in your usual lively way, tell us about AQUAFED and the role that it's playing in supporting businesses in the sanitation economy.
Thanks, Cheryl. Do you mind if I stand up? Is that okay? Because I'm getting a bit old and seriously, and the jet lag's kicking in. I was just about to thank you, Cheryl, by the way, and I was about to talk about how I actually feel very energized this week, and I am mentally, but physically not so right now. But I'll tell you why I'm energized, because I have to go to a lot. I get to go to a lot of these kind of international fora, particularly, UN type level stuff, and it's all good. But it's all about highlighting the problem all the time. And quite frankly, if I hear one more time the phrase, we more must be done, or 2.3 billion people haven't got access. Yeah, I know. We all know. Okay. Whereas I come here, and it's all about solutions, and it's brilliant, right? So I just want to thank all of you for just being you, because, seriously. And thanks to the Toilet Board Coalition, Cheryl and Sandy just do an amazing job. And the juxtaposition on Twitter yesterday between comments from some of these international discussions highlighting the problem, and yet the solutions that are here, it's completely different. So no, that's enough pampering and sweet words for you now. All right, so let me tell you about AQUAFED very, very quickly. So we're the International Federation of Private Water Operators. Some of you know or may have met my colleagues from Veolia. I'm not sure if they're still here this morning. So that's one of the founding fathers. So they're international, multinational companies, but they're also small companies who work only in their own country, but we've got members from kind of all over the world. And just to be clear, these are companies that are invited or contracted by public authorities or municipalities to run a system or a network, okay? So these aren't people who just go and run it by themselves. So sometimes when you hear these discussions about, public versus private and private operators profiting, etc., just remember that the governance and the legality and the regulation is all controlled by the state, and it's not private operators doing what they want. So that's a good point. Just in terms of scale of our members, I think around about 8 to 10% of the world's population are served by private operators in terms of water and sanitation. So that gives you an idea. 90% of water and sanitation services are still in the hands of municipalities or public bodies. Okay, so that gives you the scale. What our members do, I'll tell you a bit about AQUAFED in just a second, but members themselves, they are, as we said, traditionally there to bring in, they're brought in to operate a network to make it more efficient, usually, the water supply or the sanitation network. And I keep using the word network because we are still very much about kind of more traditional systems, but you've seen with Veolia particularly. Whoops, is that my alarm bell going? Okay. Perhaps that's my mum just making sure I've had my breakfast.
There was an alarm test on Monday. I wonder if...
So the private companies, they run networks and they're there to make it more efficient, but they also design and build and operate treatment plants and other technologies as well. And that's where I think that my world meets yours, because it's the technological aspect. And we've seen with Veolia, and they're following the toilet board more and more and more now, and they're being more involved because they're interested in the tech that you guys are developing. So I really think there's mutual learning that can be had between yourselves and the private operators. Just quickly about AQUAFED and how I think, why I'm here and why I feel I might be useful to you is because, we are a business platform, and we are there to work with governments to help them understand the private sector, not just private operators. And I was telling Cheryl in the break that I spend more time talking about a toilet board coalition these days than my own members, actually, because this is where the action's at right now, and it's really, really exciting and important. We've got big expertise in kind of the governance and the laws and the regulations of the private sector. But a comment from the last panelist really struck me. I think it was Nutan who said it. It was about shaping markets, right? And that's the key. And that's where I think where others can help. And I think that's where we can definitely help you as well. And last thing I think, and I'll sit down now, is AQUAFED's reach in terms of international networks. What we're trying to do on behalf of our own members, but on behalf of Toilet Board Coalition as well, is really help kind of organisations like UN Water and all the partners on UN Water, the Sanitation and Water for All partnership, and many others understand what the private sector is really about, and diversity, huge diversity, because I can tell you that you know what you're doing, but around the world we always have a huge job to explain the kind of the sanitation economy, the circular sanitation economy. There's a lot more explaining we need to do, so that's why I'm here to help you do that. Okay, I want to sit down now.
Thank you, Neil. I mean, what AQUAFED really brings here, I mean, I think that the two opportunities that Neil and I have been discussing and co-conspiring around, if I may say, is all of these operators, what if they were to apply circular economy approaches? This is what we're working on. This is the transformation that we're trying to create here. And so that's what, we're trying to engineer. And once those circular economy approaches start to come online, again, we'll need more service providers. So this is sort of part of the pathway to scale. The other area, because you just mentioned it, and I think Neil leads the group SWA, Sanitation and Water for All, which I think many of you are also a part of. And Sanitation and Water for All is the group that convenes governments. All of the governments around this, in the same room to be able to pitch to, and what we need from global governments. And, that's another opportunity for us. We talked about standards as one of our pathways to scale. Once we sort of land on the standards that we want to advocate for, this is a great group, SWA, Sanitation and Water for All, which AQUAFED is currently chairing.
Cheryl, can I just say one thing? And I promise I'll shut up, but it's exactly what Cheryl says. In my experience, it's like governments and public authorities, they're sometimes looking for that safe space in which to engage with the private sector, because there's still that fear and anxiety that I still experience all the time. So we have it with the Toilet Board Coalition, and we have it with the SWA. They are really spaces in which contracting authorities, the people that are going to allow you to do your job, is where you can meet them and where they'll listen to you. So it's really, really important.
Thank you both. So these are two examples, of other initiatives that are engaging large businesses around sanitation economy opportunities. Thank you, guys, and we're going to come back to that engagement pathway in a minute. And now some more investors in our network with different risk return sort of profiles and criteria than you heard this morning. So I'd like to invite up Julie McDowell from Grand Challenges Canada, Rudrashis Roy from Responsibility, Valentin Post. It says Waste, but I think you're representing Finnish Mondial, Valentin, and Manoj from Water.org. And John Moyer, we want him to come up and share some of that additional criteria he mentioned this morning. All very polite, aren't you? Well, I'm gonna start with you, Julie, because as a fellow Canadian, I definitely want to start and give Grand Challenges Canada the profile. So if you can pick up the mic and tell us a little bit about Grand Challenges Canada has been a huge catalytic investor in sanitation, and many of the entrepreneurs that have come through the accelerator program have benefited. Can you tell us about Grand Challenges Canada and your investment strategy?
Thank you very much, Cheryl. It's a pleasure to be here. And as I was mentioning to Cheryl yesterday, I'm so impressed with the work you've done over the past year. There's real momentum in the sector, and I think it's certainly in part because of your energy and enthusiasm here at the Toilet Board Coalition. I'm really pleased to be here on behalf of Grand Challenges Canada, and very, very proud as a Canadian of the work that Grand Challenges is doing in this space. GCC invests in bold ideas with big impact. We're one of the largest impact investors in Canada, proudly with a feminist approach. We have funded more than 1,000 innovations since our inception in more than 85 countries. And sanitation is an important part of the Grand Challenges Canada approach and portfolio. We have invested in sanitation programs, innovations, projects in 12 countries, have spent 17 million Canadian in funding. 70% of that is in urban sanitation, 30% rural. The average investment is just over $800,000 Canadian. And it's great to have some of our investee companies here in the room, including Clean Team, Sanergy, Sanovation, Aerosan, and Luot. If I've forgotten anybody, I'm sorry. But we're really excited to be here with our innovators here at this conference. The majority of our funds are focused in the sanitation portfolio, are focused in two major areas, container-based sanitation and waste to resource. I am a venture advisor for Grand Challenges Canada, and I work primarily in our Transition to Scale program. And in the Transition to Scale program, GCC provides up to $1 million Canadian to innovations. We use a phased approach with entry levels at phases 1, 2, or 3. Occasionally, we do a little bit of follow-on funding if we have multiple funders at the table.
Julie, can you tell us what that means in terms of, is it debt, is it equity, is it grants?
We invest grants and loans. We can't do equity. We'd like to be able to do equity, but we can't. Something that was new to me as coming in as an investor, something called repayable grants, which I now understand. But and so it starts at anywhere from 150,000 right up to $1 million for those innovations that are ready to scale. And it's called Transition to Scale for a reason. Following on Neil's point, the thing about the TBC that we all love is it's all about solutions. We're all about scalable, sustainable solutions, and the Transition to Scale program is where we also support innovators in creating those scalable solutions. We also provide quite a lot of venture advisor support to the innovations in the Transition to Scale portfolio, and I'd be pleased to talk to anybody afterwards who's interested in the program.
Thank you, Julian. And just to say, I mean, some of the feedback that we get from, I know the companies that have been through our program is that GCC is faster than most in deploying capital. So, so really thank you for that on behalf of the companies in the room. Thank you very much. And responsibility. I mean, responsibility. So we're based in Switzerland as well as responsibility. You know, and responsibility is a huge name in impact investing. You know, one of the first, and one of the first investors also in sanitation. Can you tell us about responsibility, your criteria, and your strategy around sanitation?
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be able to introduce responsibility to this August gathering. Very pleased to share the stage with such distinguished panelists as well. So I have been speaking to quite a few entrepreneurs over the last couple of days, investors who have been active in the space, and a lot of you don't know about responsibility, and it's not surprising at all, given that we have not been active investors in the space before. Zarapkar was a one-off investment that we did through a sector-agnostic fund. But it's not what we do currently. So whose responsibility? Responsibility was founded in 2003. We are a Swiss impact investment manager. And the mission was to bring in private sector funds into the financial inclusion space. Over time, we have expanded our scope and broadened it beyond financial inclusion to include food and agriculture as well as renewable energy. Today, we manage a portfolio of $3.2 billion globally across emerging markets. We are present in 90 plus emerging markets and have invested into more than 400 plus institutions. In terms of the impact that we've created, we manage a portfolio of $3 billion currently, but from inceptions, we have been able to disburse $10 billion into the impact investing space, a milestone that we achieved only a couple of weeks back.
And can you talk about your criteria? I mean, you know, what type of investments are you deploying? Debt, equity, blended?
Sure. So most of our fund is debt-based, is private debt-based. So 85% of the $3 billion is private debt, and the remaining is equity. But you would be wondering, why am I here, right? I've not talked about anything related to water and sanitation as of yet. So how this opportunity came across was we were approached by a couple of Nordic financial institutions to see if we could do something in the broader healthcare space last year. So our first idea was to look back at our existing sectors and see if there is already some healthcare linkage there, right? So we lend to microfinance institutions who on-lend for construction of toilets, for community-based water treatment plants. We also work with agri-entrepreneurs who work with organic produce. We fund renewable energy projects which sort of replace thermal power plants and reduce the emission of toxic gases into the atmosphere. So we have a healthcare linkage already in our existing portfolio. So we went back to them and told them that we could do this, but it would be mostly indirect through our existing sectors. And the feedback that we received from them, and they gave us one specific example related to the sanitation space, is that if you go direct, there's a lot more impact that you will be able to create. And an example is a public toilet versus financing a private toilet for a micro borrower, right? So the cost would more or less be the same, but the public toilet would reach and influence lives of a larger community than than a single toilet.
So this is really interesting. So you've understood, I think, the ecosystem here, and so you're investing around the ecosystem.
Correct.
So not necessarily in the sanitation business, but from the ag side, or the waste management side, which is very interesting. I heard through the grapevine that there might be a new product in the works with responsibility.
Yes. So as I mentioned, we want to do something in the direct water and sanitation space. We have, as I mentioned, a couple of Nordic financial institutions who will help raise the money from their investors. So the total amount that we are looking at is about $30 million that can be deployed across emerging markets. This could be across a variety of sectors in the water and sanitation space. So broadly, what we are looking at in terms of eligibility criteria is at least 3 years of operating track record, either already broken even on a pre-tax basis or about to break even pretty soon, and sales of at least $1 million. But over the last couple of days, based on my interactions with all of you, it seems that given this criteria, it will be difficult to build a scalable portfolio. So we would want you to come to us and challenge us on these specific eligibility guidelines, telling us that we are not there yet, but we have a very strong business model that will help us reach there in the next couple of years.
An investor asking to be challenged. I like it. Thank you. Thank you to Responsibility. We want to move next to Finish Mondial. I mean, Valentin, this is quite a remarkable initiative that has achieved much scale. And somebody said it on one of the panels yesterday, and I love this. Scale needs scale. And so how do we partner with the scale that you've achieved is what I want to know.
Thank you. So I'm very privileged to be here, and if I start introducing all my partners, I would spend all my time. But I just want to highlight a few people. Vijay was in Tata IAG when we started. AQUAFED, a current partner, Ambra Flying Doctors, not even here. But what I'm trying to say is over the last 10 years or so, we've built a portfolio of $200 million in sanitation. Mainly in household sanitation, but also in businesses. So to give you a couple of ideas on the figures, next to the 200 million, we built 1 million toilets, well over 1 million toilets. For schools, I think we over 5 or 10,000. For businesses, we are well over 2,000. Now, what is unique about it, in my opinion, it's a partnership. So I'm from waste, but I'm not going to talk too much about waste. I'm not going to talk about AQUAFED. I'm not going to talk about our local partner, Finnish Society. So it's a partnership, we're on it together. And the nice thing is that the gentleman to my right, the gentleman to my left, he doesn't even know it, but we are all partnering together, and in the funds he's talking about, we are again involved. So what is happening? If you have skill, then other people want to talk to you. Other people are coming up to you, and you can do different things. To give an example, when we started in India and we had that time a different government, we had a minister, Mr. Ramesh something, I forgot his surname, but he was a very interesting person, long white hair, he was a poet. So when we came to him the first time, he said, look, sanitation, we're doing sanitation, what is it? What do you want? But then we came back after half a year and we said, okay, we're doing sanitation. So how much have you done? We said 50,000. He said, what? You've done 50,000, and of course, thinking from the Swachh Bharat mission, 50,000 is nothing. But I'm talking 2010, 2011. So coming with 50,000 that time was for the government interesting enough. Now today, having done 1 million, means now we can't keep on doing the same thing. We will run the same machinery, but we are adding to it. So when we talk about the circular economy, that's our next focus, is the circular economy. The next point on our agenda is health. And we have been trying from the last 10 years, and we failed, and I admit it, we failed. We've been trying to link micro health insurance into the sanitation sector. This is something we're not giving up. We are committed to get micro health insurance into our financial inclusion portfolio. At the same time, we realize there are a lot of businesses which are looking for the, let's say, $100,000, $500,000 bracket. This is the Take a Stake Fund, where one of the founders, and I think John from the Take a Stake Fund is in the audience. At the same time, we are working on microfinance, again on the scale which we
Just
have
Valentin, to back up before microfinance, I mean, so are those grants you're talking about? So 50,000, 100,000, 500,000, that's grants?
No, that's all commercial finance. Commercial.
So it's equity?
Yeah,
Equity.
so it's commercial to the sector, and it's all going to be debt. But
Debt.
later on, when the Take Stake Fund grows, it's going to do equity as well. So the next thing is on the microfinance. Since we have reached a scale, we've done some numbers, we're going to launch, or one of our impact investors is going to launch an sanitation impact bond of 100 million euros for India. And it may go into a couple of other countries. From the Indian platform, where we started in 2009, we moved in 2013 to Kenya. And in 2018, we moved into 4 other countries: Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, and Bangladesh. And though the model is similar, the needs are different. You can't go into creating demand for sanitation in Bangladesh. They would just kick you out. They say, look, what we need is fecal sludge management. We need something else. Now, in the fecal sludge management business, it's very nice for us because we are, as Waste, we are a foundation started in the 80s, 1980s, with two elements. One is solid waste and one is sanitation. And to make a business
In the
out of
1980s, sanitation.
yeah. So to make a business out of sanitation, if you combine it with organic solid waste, you actually can do something much better. You can create more value. So that's the model we are working on. I know there are many different other models, and it's just to give an example of what we are doing, and we are very open to partnerships everywhere. So we're talking to the Collaborative Council, we're talking with UNICEF, not only talking, working with them, I should say. We are signing an MOU with the gentleman next to me. We are involved with responsibility at the European level. So like that, I think we are very open. So if you have any idea or an idea for a partnership, we are ready for you.
And you've just raised a new round of capital for the next phase, so some money bags over here. Manoj, water.org, famous organization providing, microfinance for water and sanitation. Can you tell us a little bit about, the types of loans that you provide for whom? And I understand you are also providing loans for SMEs as well.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. An awesome audience. It's great to be here. Valentin talked about the model, which is very similar to our model. And a traditional mindset, what I've said, we compete in the space. The reality is we collaborate in this space. We build this space together. And with that mindset, I wanted to just give a brief about what water.org is, our journey, and what kind of topics we're serving on. We started the journey in India around 15 years back. By 2008, we realized that the charity model does not suffice the huge needs of water and sanitation in India. We realized that at that stage, it's more important to have a financial model, a financial product that can actually solve the problem. We started to build partnerships and started to see at their operational and their financial risks and what do they need to support those solutions. Over a period of time, I'm happy to inform that we've done over 2.5 million loans in India itself with our partners, which has actually been able to generate over $500 million of capital mobilization through the systems. Now, why is this important and what makes it happen through this? The partners' biggest challenge that comes is that they have the funds, but they are not confident of actually releasing those funds for something as bizarre as water and sanitation. I'm talking 10 years back. I'm talking, even 5 years back. It was very difficult. So we would help them in making them understand that this is a viable product. We would help them in giving them the technology to build the product. We would help them in terms of capacity building, training the loan officers in the MFIs and in the SHPIs, the self-help promoting institutions, to understand how do you go about selling this product. We help them in creating the capacity building in terms of providing IC material for them. Things which have actually helped them make it more the ease of lending, gaining the confidence that yes, this can be done. We now provide them with, we've further gone ahead and provide them with things like data analytics, helping them analyze which parts of the country are doing well and where do they need further help. What are the different products that can sell? So the big thing which has happened for us is we help catalyze funds to go to the right place and to have the mobilization of those funds. On the MSME and the entrepreneur side, we help entrepreneurs understand what is the efficiency of the funds that they're using. Are there ways by which we can connect them with other financial institutions, with the banks, with the MFIs, NBFCs, where they can get better bang for their buck. We help them in reducing the cost for capital and by blending those finances. On the third side that we work extensively is on the policy side, working with the Reserve Bank of India and seeing how we've helped in bringing the priority sector lending into water and sanitation in priority sector lending. We work with, and last we work with.
Manoj, can you talk about the size? So what type of lending from how much to how much?
So, the size. The big size in the market which we have seen is this is at least a 50 to 80,000 crore market that we're talking. I'm talking in crores.
No, I mean, how much the loans? How much would you lend? Like 50,000, 100,000?
So the loans, which if you look at the end of the mile, at the rural sector, the 15,000 rupees is what the loan is. Think about it. The person in the village or the person at the below poverty line is not being able to get their the toilet made because they do not have disposable 15,000 loans. If we can provide them through the financial institutions unsecure 15,000 rupee loan to 20,000 rupee loan, it can make a huge change in the way they look at it. The change also happens in their behavior, in how they want, when they pay back those loans, they take care and their better operation and maintenance of their toilets, which actually helps them in build forward. I want to even quickly talk about how the market, though it has achieved, under the SBM program, it came to 10 crore toilets had been made, 10 million toilets had been made. The challenge which now comes is the sanitation market is now thriving. There's an opportunity for people to understand that the second toilet is not going to be made by the government, but it's going to be made through their own borrowings. The second toilet or the first toilet needs to be retrofitted. It needs to be improved. And there's no reason why they should not have an aspirational toilet in the middle of the village. That's what we are now pushing ourselves to.
Fantastic. And what we've been talking to water.org about and why they're a member of the Toilet Board Coalition is all of those people that are getting sanitation loans from water.org, are looking for who to purchase from, whether they're purchasing a biodigester, or an upgraded toilet, as you said, they are your customers. So we think there's some really interesting opportunities there, in addition to the SME lending. Thank you, Manoj. So John, we heard from you, the first investment in the cohort. We're very proud of that. But tell us more broadly the kind of investments that you can make through water equity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Cheryl. So as I mentioned, Water Equity is an impact investor specifically focused on water and sanitation. We're investing exclusively for increasing access, particularly among lower income households in emerging markets. We're a new company, so we haven't reached the lofty heights of some of our really accomplished colleagues like Responsibility and Avishkar. We spun off from water.org in 2017, but we're growing quickly. We have 60 million US in assets under management currently, and we're investing in 3 countries. About half of our capital is deployed here in India. We primarily invest in 2 avenues. So the first is microfinance has been mentioned here. The first is we're providing capital to microfinance institutions to help them scale up their portfolios of household level loans for water and sanitation facilities. The other is direct investments into operating companies in the supply chain. So the types of companies that are here that are directly providing services, providing technology, product manufacturing, and so forth. So far, the funds that we're managing are debt funds, so we're providing loans. We're looking for post break-even companies that have scalable business models where debt financing can really help them to scale up and serve more households. We provide US dollar and local currency loans, tenors up to 5 years. We've been lending in the $1 to $7 million range. Our average loan size is $3 million. It's a little bit smaller when you think about the direct investments into operating companies as opposed to the MFIs, which tend to take larger loans.
And can you do equity?
To date, we cannot. So despite the fact that our name is Water Equity, we do not make equity investments. I have my colleagues in the marketing team to thank for that. Actually that leads to one of my other points, which is, right now we're only providing debt, but obviously we see in the sector there's enormous need for early stage funding. So that's an area that we're exploring, is potentially launching equity funds to finance innovative earlier stage companies.
Yes, please.
And big picture, our idea is we want to demonstrate that water and sanitation is not just a sector where you can generate impact. Of course you can, the impact is enormous, but you can also generate financial returns, because that's how we can really attract the huge wall of private capital to the sector that we need to achieve SDG 6.
The huge wall of private capital. Let's leave it there. Thank you, guys.